From the broadcast center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
This is the 2:30 Sports Update on 1680 The Crow. I'm Zach Clark. The Vancouver Canucks have named Quinn Hughes as the 15th captain in franchise history. Lachlan Irvin has more.
Be a leader through his work ethic and, in the games. And as time goes on, I'll learn more and more about myself and being a leader. And
Hughes inherits the role from Bo Horvat, who was traded to the New York Islanders in January. Hughes will officially hit the ice as captain for the first time when the Canucks open training camp on September 21st. Lachlan Irvin, 1680 The Crow.
Hughes becomes the first American captain in the franchise's history. Looking at basketball now, after Canada's first ever FIBA World Cup podium finish, they turn their sights to the Paris Olympics. Since they took down the United States to win the bronze, they say the pressure has increased to do well at the Olympics in 2024. 4 Canadians are headed to the Diamond League, a top track and field event. Andre DeGrasse, Aaron Brown, Sarah Mitten, and Marco Arop will represent the red and white. In tennis news, Novak Djokovic has won the U.S. Open, reclaiming his title as the #1 ranked men's tennis player. He bested Daniil Medvedev in straight sets to become the first player to win 24 Grand Slams in the professional era. Coco Gauff won the women's singles at only 19 years old, taking down Aryna Sabalenka. And Canadian Gabriela Dabrowski and her partner, Erin Routliffe, won the women's doubles title. Dabrowski became the first Canadian woman ever to win a doubles Grand Slam title. In the NFL, Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin isn't expected to play in the Bills' opening game against the Jets. Despite many doubting he would ever play again, he made the Bills roster as the backup safety and played in 3 exhibition games this summer.
Damar Hamlin is not expected to play in a regular season game for the first time since going into cardiac arrest when the Buffalo Bills opened the season against the New York Jets on Monday night, a source told the Associated Press. Hamlin, a safety who had to be resuscitated on the field in Cincinnati last January, played in 3 exhibition games this summer. He made the Bills roster as a backup after many doubted he would be able to take the field again. The decision not to activate him Monday night was first reported by ESPN and NFL Network. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
The Bills face off against the Jets tonight, and speaking of the Jets, Aaron Rodgers has been feeling the synergy with his new team.
It's an exciting team, and the team is ready. I feel like we just needed something to galvanize. I'm not saying I'm it. I'm just saying there's an energy that's kind of surrounded me, and the team has picked up on it, and it's a good feeling.
Rodgers enters his 19th career season in the NFL. Disney and Charter Communications have announced a deal that finally settles a licensing dispute for the NFL. Over 15 million fans would have been unable to watch the opening night between the Bills and Jets, but the companies finalized the agreement less than a day before kickoff. This will allow Spectrum to carry Disney's stations. Sports betting company DraftKings has apologized after using the 9/11 terror attacks to promote sports betting. The Boston-based company offered users a 9/11-themed promotion titled Never Forget. It required the 3 New York teams, the Yankees, Mets, and Jets, to win their games Monday, the anniversary of the attacks. DraftKings has since taken down the promotion. The FIBA World Cup was a major disappointment for the Americans as they failed to podium despite having the highest paid roster in the tournament. They have committed to a better performance in the upcoming Olympics. University of Michigan football head coach Jim Harbaugh sees revenue sharing as inevitable. He went out of his way to encourage sharing the revenues schools see by selling players' rights to games and television. Harbaugh isn't alone in his belief as players should be paid to play and thinks it's the next evolution of major college sports. And the Spanish Soccer Federation president who kissed a player without her consent has resigned. That's been your 2:30 news update on 1680 The Crow. I'm Zach Clark. Thank you for listening.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Life for a young junior hockey player is tough, especially for ones that are considered stars. Take a look into the good, the bad, and the ugly of Canada's most loved sport. Our reporter Zach Clark was able to sit down with some of the PGHL's finest.
Chris Fordham's is the living embodiment of my favorite line from Rudyard Kipling. In the poem If, Kipling talks about what it means, what it takes to grow up and become a man. And the line is, quote, "If you meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same." And actually that line is also over the championship court in Wimbledon as the players come out. But what Kipling means is there are times in life where you will win and you will lose. And obviously in hockey that's the same. But the moment itself of victory and defeat is fleeting. The moment, in other words, is an imposter. It should not define you. Instead, how you react actually defines your manhood and your character. Are you magnanimous? Are you gracious? Are you bitter? And so in the case of Fordham's, to bring it back to the Whalers, my enduring image of Chris Fordham's will not actually be him scoring. He certainly did plenty of that. Instead, I shall always remember the Fordham's who lost. But in losing, he displayed his true character. In the Ladner Leisure Centre earlier this month, in March, he was red-eyed from crying after his junior career ended. But he collected himself and stood tall during my interview with him outside of the dressing room. He spoke very movingly about his 4 years with the Whalers.
Thousands of people play junior hockey, and tens of thousands watch it. It's such an important part of Canadian culture, but few understand the grueling, difficult lives of junior hockey players. But with years of experience in hockey, Alistair was able to shed a little light.
Hi, I'm Alistair Burns. I'm the PA announcer and the public relations spokesman for the White Rock Whalers, and actually I'm a BCIT alumnus as well. I graduated in 2010.
Alistair knows that it's not just a fun pastime. It's still a sport where the teams have to compete. The work these players have to put in is strenuous, and it isn't always rewarding.
It's a grind, because each of these young men have to be disciplined. Junior hockey can be very expensive. In the case of Junior B, each player pays thousands of dollars per season to play. But of course, the coach makes the decision of whether you're sitting, whether you're playing, who's a healthy scratch, who's injured, and so on. So one day you're signed to a team, and the next day you can be traded or released. I've seen it many eager players who walk in to chat to the coach, the door closes, and all of a sudden, bam, your life is turned upside down.
But as Chris Fordham's longtime teammate Bryce Margetson will tell you, it's not just the fear of being traded that makes it hard. The game itself is a battle.
And that was my first real wake-up call, because all the 20-year-olds, they would not leave you without hitting you. If you had that puck and you got it out, they're going to finish the check, and it hurts. Especially when you're a 16-year-old kid or a 17-year-old kid, it hurts.
But for Chris Fordham's, the dedication and skill required to survive in the league seemed to be natural. He took home both team or league awards in every single year of his junior career. He quickly rose to being one of the most relied-on members of his team, being first in points 3 consecutive years and being named captain in his last. But in that last year, it seemed like all the hard work and dedication had finally paid off.
Svensson leaves it for Sherwin. Sherwin pass across, shot, scores! The captain Fordham's, we've talked about how he needs 4 points tonight to set a new record for the PGHL, and just 8 minutes into the first period, he's got his first.
Yeah, we talked about how this is actually a very doable record for him to break here tonight. This could be a good point night for the White Rock Whalers. Sherwin, great pass, great hockey IQ to be able to think about who would be open in that circumstance. Finds Fordham's wide open. Not much Sharma can do in that scenario. 2-on-1, empty net basically for Captain 40, and well, he's always going to bury that. And yeah, like you said,
I think I've grown a lot. I think I've probably more grown as a person more than a player. Obviously, my points have grown a bunch, but I think that's just getting older and getting more comfortable in the league and everything like that. But the organization has helped me grow as a player just through the systems play and every practices, and the coaches have helped me along with everything that I've asked them to. If I needed reference for something, they've helped me with it, or anything like that. They've helped me a lot as a person and a player.
His relentless self-improvement, both on and off the ice, didn't go unnoticed. In 2022, he was named the Whalers' 3rd ever captain.
I don't know what I expected, but I was pretty ecstatic to get the captain. Obviously, my first year, my veteran, Calder Newson, was the captain. And then The year after that, my cousin Tyler Price was the captain for the past 2 years, so that was pretty cool to get captain after that from him. I don't know, I expected to just have a good year and just make the playoffs as a captain. That's all I wanted to do. Push the boys forward, just make sure we're doing better each year.
What many don't understand is that this isn't just a side activity. The boys, well, as Fordham's line mates will tell you, they can end up becoming your lifelong friends.
Me, Fordham's and Margetson and Svensson are looking into like post-secondary hockey, maybe UBCO, Trinity Western, UBC, something along those lines. But yeah, for sure, definitely.
Everybody ended up blending in so well and blending together, which I think really honestly helps with every single team in this league. Because if you guys aren't friends off the ice, there's not going to be chemistry that leads onto the ice. And I think that's what we had the best, was our chemistry off the ice, which led to our on-ice success.
And on-ice success they would have. Fordham's won the MVP of the entire league, and his line put up an unbelievable 243 combined points. So Fordham's, along with his line mates, led the team through the highs.
Newsom takes it across, Fordham's pass in front, a juicy rebound given up on the pad, and they score! Big goal, Cole with the hat trick, with his back against the wall. Cole Svensson does it all, and that will do it! In overtime, the hat trick for Cole Svensson!
And the unfortunate final lows.
And applaud the Delta Ice Hawks on a series victory, 4-1. They close it out here in Game 5, 4-2 over the White Rock Whalers.
And just like that, it was all over. The years of training, perseverance, and hard work had come to its bittersweet end. Many junior players continue on after, like Fordham's and his line plan on doing. Many others hang up the skates altogether. But the one thing every player has is their own unique story and a passion for the game. We hope you enjoyed this peek behind the curtain of the good, bad, and ugly of Canada's most loved sport. I've been Zach Clark with my producer Liam Higgs for 1680.
Back in September, a group of engineering students here on campus came together with a common goal: restarting the BCIT Racing Club, which competes in off-road vehicle competitions. The problem? It's been over 3 years since the club was active. Jake McGrail has the story.
Yeah, so it was a bit chaotic for the first couple months. In fact, it's still kind of chaotic.
That's Sawyer Laspa, a third-year student and the president of the club, and as he tells it, a somewhat reluctant president.
I would say everyone wanted me to do it, so it wasn't really a I want to be in this position. It's more of a we need somebody to be in this position, and I'm probably the best fit at the moment for it.
Taking charge of the week's meeting sporting a backwards cap and his steel-toed boots, Sawyer announces that they've taken a big step forward in the manufacturing process.
We got the engine, so we're pretty happy about that. Nothing looks like it's damaged. We're gonna have to get oil and gasoline before we can actually start it up.
Sitting off to the side is Chief Engineer Vincent Van Art. He's in charge of designing this year's vehicle, one that's very much still a work in progress. They have the frame and the engine, but the club's members are still working on different parts of the car, from the suspension to the transmission and more.
It's a lot of machining, manufacturing, some more design work, organization, figuring out accommodations, testing. Things are going to break. Hopefully we have enough time to fix them.
The ultimate goal is to take their vehicle to the Baja SAE event in Oregon at the end of May, an international design and racing competition. Of course, they need a working vehicle to compete, and given the tight deadline and the fact that no one in the club has competed at Baja before, there's no guarantee they'll have it ready.
I'd say that's pretty consistently been a 50% shot the whole way through. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's a little bit of luck involved, so we'll just see how things work out.
Yeah, Ben's at about 10 degrees already,
okay.
so we just need a bit more. I'm sliding. Okay, like this.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Yeah, it is dead on perfect.
Beauty. Yeah, looks good. Great. So now you guys can make another one, right?
Have to put our engine here, have that on like, well, we have to put that on like a 90-degree bevel lock. See if this thing runs.
Even if they can't get their vehicle done in time, Sawyer wants to be at the competition to take it in and learn from it.
I'm like super pumped. It's going to be really good. Sometimes you can get in like a bit of a bubble where you think that you're the best, and it's going to be interesting to see what the other programs have come up with from different schools and kind of see the possibility of what we could be doing in potentially a few years if the club continues to run.
Vincent is more optimistic, but he's not setting the goal at championship or bust.
We would like to get within, hopefully, the top 10. It would build morale. It would also help with funding. It'd also be a lot of fun. And I think the school, BCIT, would be quite proud if a club actually did quite well in one of these competitions.
This new iteration of the club still has its growing pains, but for Vincent, it's fostered a real sense of community amongst its members.
I found the biggest aid in building a good team, working well as a team, is just keeping the communication open, working with everybody, having good conversations. And then also just having friendly conversations, meeting with people, and trying to have a good time while we work.
It's that sense of collaboration that Sawyer thinks will benefit everyone, not just in terms of building their Baja vehicle, but in the rest of their schooling as well.
Connecting with the first and the second years, I think that's been really valuable. The fourth years, at least in the mechanical engineering department, they've been kind of distant, and so I think it's been really nice to get to talk with the first years and the second years and, you know, give them some advice on how they can, you know, succeed in the program, and also just like reminisce on like, oh yeah, when we were in first year and all that stuff was so hard and now it's really easy.
For 1680 The Crow, with my co-producer Jen J.
The modern car industry is ever growing, but the historic car industry refuses to die. Zach Clark has more.
As time marches on, more and more classic cars are destroyed, some for parts, some through accidents, and many through neglect. But there's a small niche of collectors fighting hard to preserve these historic machines. Nick Cormier is one such collector, and as we stepped into his garage, we could tell he was passionate.
I'm very much what you'd call a hobbyist, so my knowledge of cars is very specific to classics, you know, not what your everyday person's driving around. I don't mess around with that computery stuff. I'm not here to make money. The car in question is a 1962 Mercury Monterey, which I found on Craigslist for $1,500 and dragged out of a field with a flatbed and had it brought over to a garage, which I had rented for a couple of years.
It's not just not profitable, it's expensive. So why do people like Nick invest so much money and time into this?
You know, as rough as it was when I picked it up, buying that car is one of the things I regret least doing in my life. When people see me with it, like I'd have my garage door open and people would walk by, I would get so many compliments and comments and people asking me about it, and there's just such interest out there for it. And I couldn't let this piece of history, this rolling piece of art, go to waste, even if it is a terrible financial decision and soaks up a lot of my time.
But it's not just time and money. It takes skill, too, using dangerous power tools and even welding.
In terms of the metalworking component, that was high school. You know, I took metal fabrication in high school, easily my, you know, best class, favorite class. It's nice to get to carry that over into my hobby.
His current car is his longest project, having started on it almost 3 years ago.
So that car had sat before I bought it for approximately 15 years. And I have a feeling that when it was parked, it wasn't in the best shape to begin with. You know, some of these cars are parked for a reason.
A car in need of this many repairs requires someone with knowledge, expertise, and a willing to put up with a little monotony.
Okay, pedal down, pedal up. We've got fluid now. Okay. Pedal down.
Pedal up. Pedal down.
He knows his cars might never reach a showroom floor, but according to him, that's never been what it's all about.
It's a bit of a Havana restoration, not the clean edges and the prettiest.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, I'm Richard Davis, new at 3 p.m., an update on our top story. According to Vancouver Police Chief Adam Palmer, the 64-year-old suspect in the Chinatown stabbing that sent 3 victims to hospital was on day release from a psychiatric facility. In a press conference today, he said the attack, quote, defies logical explanation, and the man has had contact with police before, but have no records of the man being in Vancouver. According to police, the attack occurred at the Light Up Chinatown Festival last night around 6 p.m. The yearly festival is organized by the Vancouver Chinatown Foundation to revitalize the district. And now over to the story that's got the town talking. The Vancouver Canucks have named Quinn Hughes as the 15th captain in franchise history. Lachlan Irvine has more.
At just 23 years old, Canucks defenseman Quinn Hughes knows he has his work cut out for him as the team's new captain.
I'm never going to be the loudest guy in the room. I'm going to be a guy that hopefully can be a leader through his work ethic and, in the games. And as time goes on, I'll learn more and more about myself and being a leader. And
Hughes inherits the role from Bo Horvat, who was traded to the New York Islanders in January. Hughes will officially hit the ice as captain for the first time when the Canucks open training camp on September 21st. Lachlan Irvin, 1680 The Crow.
Now, please stay tuned for more sports news coming up later, but now it's big news for renters, as BC landlords will have to cap their rental increases at 3.5% next year, well below the 12-month inflation rate average of 5.6%. The government announced that the allowable rent increase today, saying it's a balance to protect renters from escalating housing costs while keeping rental units on the market. The rate is higher than the 2% allowed this year after a rent freeze during the pandemic years. Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon says costs have been increasing at a rate that's unsustainable for many people, especially when it comes to housing. American pop star Beyoncé is set to perform tonight at BC Place, a long-awaited concert for many fans across Canada.
I was planning to see her like 2 months ago in Toronto, but I couldn't, so Canada was the only opportunity I had to see her, so Vancouver was my only option at the moment.
Now, our reporter Riley Leung is actually outside BC Place. So, Riley, how busy is the venue?
Well, from what I can see right now, it's not so busy. Maybe a couple hundred people, but not as many as I thought it would be at 3 p.m.
And
back to you, Richard.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, what's going on in the surrounding area, and what's kind of the feeling in the crowd outside BC Place?
Well, by Terry Fox Plaza, there is merch being sold outside. There's a couple hundred people lining up for that, way more than the people actually lining up for the venue, surprisingly. But at the venue, you can see a bunch of people in silver clothing, actually. I'm not very familiar with Beyonce, but I do say it is pretty cool. Back to you, Richard.
Thanks so much, Riley. Now, moving on now, BC is expecting level 4 or 5 drought conditions on more than 80% of water basins. Our reporter Alicia Nolasco explains more about what some of the consequences are to the shortage of water.
After numerous wildfires in the province, BC is facing severe drought conditions, bringing concerns to experts on the increased flooding risks and damages that might happen when the rain gets back to its course. The drought affects the economy directly, given that in many areas of the agricultural sector, crops need to be irrigated. It also transcends on cities that need to draw water to supply people. The province explains that it is unpredictable what the damage to the wildlife, livelihood, and land will be. Alicia Nolasco, 1680, The Crow.
As an especially hot summer comes to a close, residents of BC might be asking what can be done to help people affected by wildfires and the associated smoke. Our reporter, Max Mashman, has more.
After one of the hottest summers on record in British Columbia, many residents are being directly impacted by wildfires. I spoke to environmental anthropologist Maya Dorio on how to mitigate the impacts of these new seasonal disasters.
People should have access to proper masks and filtration systems for their homes before their towns are inundated with smoke. We need to have cooling centers set up for heat waves, as well as clean air centers where people can escape wildfire smoke, for example.
Dorio went on to speak to the importance of predicting the needs of and providing assistance to vulnerable populations, such as the unhoused and people with disabilities. Max Mashman, 1680, The Crow.
Now, wildfires continue to be a big issue for the province, with an estimated 400 buildings destroyed this summer alone. Now, the federal NDP critic for natural resources says the CEO of oil sands giant Suncor has a lot of explaining to do over his remarks on a conference call in August. Today, Charlie Angus said he will ask the Natural Resources Committee to summon Rich Kruger when the House of Commons resumes next week. Kruger told investors on the call that the Calgary-based company had a, quote, disproportionate, end quote, focus on the longer-term energy transition to low-emitting and renewable fuels. He said it needed to revise its direction towards the immediate financial opportunities in the oil sands. Now over to India, where our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is still stuck after the G20 summit. The Prime Minister's plane, a CC-150, was originally built in the late 1980s, and replacements for the fleet are currently being procured. A replacement plane with the spare parts needed to get his plane in flying condition is on its way. Tuesday is the earliest Trudeau will be back in Canada. Now across the border, where authorities in Pennsylvania have been trying to capture an escaped murderer for nearly 2 weeks, while they say they're shifting to a longer-term strategy and defended their efforts to this point. Robert Clark, the supervisor of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force in Philadelphia, said during a news conference Monday that law enforcement teams have the advantage now that Danielo Souza Calavante is apparently in suburban Philadelphia, rather than the heavily wooded and more complicated terrain of the initial search area. This comes after police say Calavante slipped through the search perimeter, stole a delivery van, and abandoned it about 20 miles north. Calavante escaped from prison on August 31st after being sentenced to life for killing an ex-girlfriend in 2021. The country of Chile is marking the 50th anniversary of the 1973 military coup. The coup ushered in the military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet, who led the country till 1990. Thousands gathered outside of the Chilean government house in Santiago to mark the anniversary. Chilean President Gabriel Boric recently announced a plan to try and locate those who went missing during the regime. Now back here in Vancouver, the Chilean Housing Co-op is set to gather at the Russian Hall this evening to commemorate the victims. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is departed for Russia, where he is expected to hold a highly anticipated meeting with President Vladimir Putin that has sparked Western concerns about a potential arms deal for Moscow's war in Ukraine. The Kremlin's website said Kim's visit is at Putin's invitation and said it would take place in the coming days. The visit was also reported by North Korea's official KCNA news agency, saying he would meet with Putin. Associated Press journalists near the North Korea-Russia border saw a green train with yellow trim, similar to the armored train used by Kim on foreign previous trips, at a station on the North Korean side. Almost 2,500 have been confirmed dead and over 1,000 critically injured during Friday's 6.8 magnitude earthquake that took place in Morocco. Riley Leung has the story.
It's been 3 days since the 6.8 magnitude earthquake hit the city of Marrakesh and its surrounding area. Rescuers are still desperately trying to find and dig up survivors from under the rubble. Aid from around the globe have been sent to support the citizens of Morocco, relieving many of its strained rescuers and increasing the pace to find survivors before time runs out. Canadians are encouraged to send support, with many rescue volunteers already at the scene. This is Morocco's deadliest earthquake since 1960, where an earthquake killed over 12,000 people. Riley Leung, 1680, The Crow.
Over to the NFL now, where Damar Hamlin's highly anticipated return to the NFL is being pushed back.
Damar Hamlin is not expected to play in a regular season game for the first time since going into cardiac arrest when the Buffalo Bills opened the season against the New York Jets on Monday night, a source told the Associated Press. Hamlin, a safety who had to be resuscitated on the field in Cincinnati last January, played in 3 exhibition games this summer. He made the Bills roster as a backup after many doubted he would be able to take the field again. The decision not to activate him Monday night was first reported by ESPN and NFL Network. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
Sports betting company DraftKings has apologized after using the September 11, 2001 terror attacks to entice people to bet on baseball and football games. The Boston-based company offered users a 9/11 themed promotion titled Never Forget, and it required the Yankees, Mets, and Jets to win their games today. That happens to be the 22nd anniversary of the attacks in the World Trade Center and Pentagon of the downing of a passenger jet in a field in Pennsylvania. The tragedy killed nearly 3,000 people. An outcry on social media from people offended by the promotion followed. DraftKings later took it down and apologized. It's the first week of the 2023-2024 NFL season, and it's wrapping up tonight as the Buffalo Bills face the New York Jets. Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers says he feels there's a good momentum with his new team.
It's an exciting team, and the team is ready. I feel like we just needed something to galvanize. I'm not saying I'm it. I'm just saying there's an energy that's kind of surrounded me, and the team has picked up on it, and it's a good feeling.
He'll enter his 19th season tonight. Rodgers has been named league MVP 4 times and has won a Super Bowl. The Toronto Blue Jays aim for 4 in a row when they host the Texas Rangers tonight. Toronto has taken a 1-game edge on Seattle for the second American League wildcard spot. Texas sits a half game behind the Mariners for the third and final one. Chris Bassett will man the mound for the Jays, and the Rangers counter with Jane Dunning. Now, the Canucks weren't the only team in the NHL to announce a captain today. Across the country, the Montreal Canadiens have named defenseman Mike Matheson as an alternative captain. The 29-year-old Matheson led the team's defense with 34 points in 48 games last season. Veteran Brendan Gallagher will continue to serve as an alternative captain, while forward Nick Suzuki retained his role as team captain. Moving to weather now, it's 17 degrees and partly cloudy outside our studio in Burnaby. Thanks for listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
ride-hail and food delivery services have become a popular means of working independently as a result of the flexibility at working at one's own pace. These workers form part of what's called the gig economy. As the possibilities of gig work expand, so do the problems with adjusting to a less traditional means of employment. British Columbians were invited to share their thoughts through a poll referred to as the What We Heard report regarding their experience as gig workers and the common problems they all faced. I am with the Parliamentary Secretary Janet Rutledge, who outlines some of the most consistent problems gig workers voice and how there needs to be a fair standard set in place.
Thank you so much for joining us, Janet.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem. So, in the What We Heard report, it appears that a lot of gig workers seem to voice some of the same issues stemming from low wages, poor working conditions, to not being treated fairly. So what are your suggestions moving forward in light of the feedback? And is there anything someone wishing to do gig work in BC should know or be cautious about moving forward?
Well, the What We Heard report is a place for us to start in terms of having further, deeper discussions for improving their working conditions and their situation. And so I think what people who want to engage in that work need to know is that at this point in time, the app companies consider them to be independent contractors. And so they do not at this point have standard employment relationships. And this is something that we need to address. So what we've found from our consultation is that the flexibility that comes with this kind of work is really important to the workers. But they also, and everyone, pretty well the consensus is that the working conditions have to improve. There's some room for improvement. So we've learned that the lack of employment standards creates serious vulnerabilities for these workers. So going into this, they need to know that. But based on what we heard in the consultation, we know that what they want is what everyone wants, which is to be treated fairly on the job, to make a decent living, to be safe on the job, and if they lose this job, to be told why and to have an opportunity to defend themselves, to tell their side of the story.
Right. So it's just about fairness overall then. So gig work falls into the category of precarious work, which in British Columbia, I believe, is work that may not provide benefits, fewer protections, and lower pay. So I wanted to figure out, relative to other provinces, whether some of the issues surrounding precarious work are unique to British Columbia. However, the problem I faced was exactly that. It was finding any relevant information. So is gig work, whether its opportunities or experiences, any different compared to other Canadian provinces? And do you maybe see a system in the future where there's maybe more inter-provincial data sharing?
Well, what I can tell you is that jurisdictions all over the world are grappling with this right now. And so this is one of the things that we're looking at. We did address it in the What We Heard report, is that different jurisdictions are coming up with different solutions. The situation in Canada is that each province sets its own labor standards, and we want to make labor standards, employment standards for these workers that is a made in BC solution. And we think that what we'll come up with will be a standard that other provinces and that the federal government in its jurisdiction can see as something to work towards. And I also want to be clear that this report, what we're working on right now, is at this point in time limited to ride-hail drivers and food delivery drivers. At this point in time, we want to set the standard with them, and then we can expand it to other areas of gig work that are applicable after that.
Right, right. So you kind of want to pioneer a sort of model to maybe have other provinces jump on board. No, I think that's a really good method.
Yes, absolutely. And what I should also mention is that we're like, not all, what we're finding is that not all gig work is created equal. What we, often have thought of as gig work, people, doing work on the side that's not being their living, is changing rapidly. And that the drivers that we spoke to, this is how they make their living, is driving ride hail and or food delivery. This is like a whole new area of employment that we're getting into.
Right. And I suppose this kind of connects my next question. How do you see the future of gig work in British Columbia?
Well, I think my starting point is I want to tell you about what their conditions are now and how we don't want that to be their conditions in the future.
Sure.
So let me give you some examples. So I spoke to a food delivery driver who, his big complaint was that when he goes to a restaurant to pick up a delivery, the restaurant often will not let him use the washroom. They say the washroom is for customers only, and so he feels like that's undignified for him. I talked to a ride-hail driver who is one of this company's top drivers, and he was discontinued. They call it discontinued, which is he's taken off the app, and they don't give him any more assignments. And he could not find out why he was fired. In fact, there was a point where they told him to stop bugging them, to stop pestering them to tell him why they had discontinued him.
Oh, wow.
And 2 weeks later, he found out, they called him up and said it was a mistake. They had meant to fire a different driver, not him. And when they reinstated him, he was not compensated for his for the 2 weeks of earnings that he'd lost. And one of the things that is really significant about this is a lot of the drivers are new immigrants, they're new Canadians, they don't necessarily know what their rights are in Canada, and they are trying to get established, to make a living, to support their families in this country as soon as possible, which is what the attraction is in this work, is that it's fairly easy to get hired. But as we've found out, it's also pretty easy to get fired.
Right. No, for sure. And no, having worked in a restaurant myself, I personally, I'd always let the drivers use the washroom, but I remember that being a rule, and I was always reluctant to follow it. I found, well, they're workers, they should use the washroom. But
yeah.
I suppose is there anything else you would want people to know?
Well, I think what people should know is that we did do an online survey, and some members of the public did participate in the survey. And what we found is people who use these services, and I should mention in passing, an increasing number of British Columbians are using ride-hail and food delivery services. And what we found out from the survey is that 95% believe that gig workers should have the right to refuse unsafe work while working. 83% believe that gig workers should have the right to a fair process when terminated, and 73% believe that gig workers should have have benefits such as paid sick leave and wage protection if they become injured at work.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Parliamentary Secretary. Those are all the questions I have for you. So I'm going to let you go, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Well, and thank you. I really appreciate, Anthony, you being so interested in this important story.
It was, and I honestly, I had no idea there were so many people involved in this type of work. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot through the news release, and no, it was really a pleasure talking to you. So I'd like to thank my guest, Parliamentary Secretary Janet Routledge, for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you to the Parliamentary Secretary Janet Rutledge for joining us. And listeners, please join us next time on For the Record.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
from the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus. This is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
This is the 3:30 news update. I'm Zach Clark. As drought continues in the province of BC, the ecological damages such as life in aquatic channels suffer. Our reporter Alicia Nolasco spoke with a forestry specialist to understand the effects of this climate event.
The drought has brought consequences to aquatic life, one of them being the surveillance of salmon. Hydrologist forestry professor Eunice Alila explains the reason for this event.
There are tens of thousands of fish that end up dying because they couldn't find enough water for them on these smaller streams that are very close to the ocean. It's a very sad situation indeed for our salmon.
Professor Alila also associates the loss of the salmon with the economical crisis that are subsequent to these incidents due to the water restrictions. Alicia Nolasco, 1680, The Crow.
Gurpatwant Singh Panun, the spokesperson for a non-binding Punjabi independence vote for Metro Vancouver's Sikh community, says this weekend's vote drew such a large crowd that a second event will be needed to accommodate all voters.
We are going to see if we are able to secure a facility like an outside community hall or a gymnasium or schools we have a bad experience. So that will be once we give the options to the commission, then they will pick up where they would like to hold this referendum.
Panun says organizers would hold a second phase of the Vancouver referendum on October 29th. In U.S. news, U.S. President Joe Biden remembers the victims of the 9/11 terror attacks. Nearly 3,000 people were killed on that day, and Biden said when he visited Ground Zero, it felt as if he was looking through the gates of hell.
I join you on this solemn day to renew our sacred vow. Never forget. Never forget. We never forget. Each of us. Each of those precious lives stolen too soon when evil attacked.
Memorial services are being held all across the United States. United States regulators have approved new COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna, which are aimed at ramping up protection this fall and winter. The Food and Drug Administration is going to treat the new vaccines like getting a yearly flu shot. However, they are still awaiting the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to sign off. The two boards meet Tuesday to discuss how to use the vaccines best. Both the new COVID shots and flu shots can be given at the same time. The Biden administration has bargained a deal for the release of 5 American citizens detained in Iran by issuing a waiver for international banks to transfer $6 billion in frozen Iranian money without fear of U.S. sanctions. Secretary of State Antony Blinken signed the waiver last week, but Congress was not told about it until Monday. The waiver means that banks can transfer the frozen funds to Qatar's central bank, where it will be held for Iran to use for humanitarian purposes. Donald Trump's lawyers have asked the federal judge presiding over his case in Washington to recuse herself. His lawyers claim her past public statements about the former president, his connection to the January 6th riots at the Capitol, call into question whether she can be fair. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan was nominated to the bench by Barack Obama. She has stood out as one of the toughest judges on the January 6th riots. And the viral One Chip Challenge finds itself in hot water after a teenager died doing the trend. The company behind the product has pulled it from store shelves after the death. Despite its popularity on both social media and in retail outlets, it looks like the challenge may now be a thing of the past. And an American researcher has been rescued from a deep Turkish cave over a week after he became ill. The Speleological Federation of Turkey says rescues pulled researcher Mark Dickey out of a cave more than a week after he started stomach bleeding more than 3,000 feet below the cave entrance. That was your 3:30 news update. I'm Zach Clark. Thank you for listening.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.